Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. I hope all of you are fine and having good time at your home. Dear students, today our moral lesson is building a strong character, which means that a very nice quote says that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. We are all here to learn our lessons. Our parents, school teachers, friends, colleagues, office mates, neighbors, they are our teachers. When we open our doors for self improvement, we increase our chances to head to the road of success. Dear students, today we started chapter number 3, reproduction in plants, and our article is pollination. First of all, what is pollination? As you know, all flowering plants depends on pollination for the reproduction. So, pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower. Fertilizations occur when the male pollen unites with the female egg. Here in the picture you can see that the opening at the end of the pistil where the pollen enters. The anthers are covered in dark orange pollen and the pollinators find the sugary sweet nectar at the bottom of the pistil. Here we are showing the diagram of a beautiful flower, and in this diagram showing the parts of flower, petals, sepals, anther, filament, stigma, style, ovary. So the male part is known as anther and the female part of the plant is known as stigma. So pollinations happen when a pollen grain is transferred from anther, which is the male part of the flower, to the stigma, which is the female part of the flower. Pollination can only be successful if the flowers are from the same species. Which species? Same species. For example, pollen from tulip plants can only pollinate with another tulip plant. There will be no successful pollination if the pollen from rose plant reaches the flower of tulip. Okay, as you know very well, what is pollen? Pollen is a yellow dust. Pollen is the fertilizing structure produced in a stamen of flower. The term was first used in 1760. It was meant as dust of fine flour at that time, means very small particles of dust. So now we discuss how many types of pollinations are there. There are two types of pollination, self-pollination and cross-pollination. First of all, we discuss self-pollination. Dear students, self-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant. Is it clear, students, that self-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther, that is the male part of the flower, to the stigma, that is the female part of the flower of the same plant or another flower of the same plant, is known as self-pollination. Here we are showing the self-pollination in flower. Here showing pollen comes loose from stamens and a pistil of the same flower collects pollen. Here showing the pollen grains. Now, what is cross-pollination? Cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of a genetically different flower. Cross pollination is performed with the help of an external agency. Okay, here in diagram showing the cross pollination, that the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of different flower. Pollen grains transfer from one flower to the another different flower, and cross pollination is performed with the help of an external agency, means that the external agency should be wind, water, insect. So in this diagram you can see the cross pollination. Here in cross pollination, pollen from stamen sticks to a bee. Bee is an external agency as it visits a flower to collect food. The bee travels to another plants of the same type. Pollen on the bee sticks to pistil of a flower on the other plant, which means that the honeybee collects pollen from one flower and then move to the another flower, and the pollen is stick to the another flower. Here is showing the cross pollination. Okay, there are also agents of pollination. Insect pollination. When pollen grains are transferred by insects such as bees, butterflies, ants, and other insects from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same or another flower. Here in diagram showing the honeybee and butterfly, that is the agents of pollination. In this diagram you can see different insects and animals showing the agents of pollination. Here you can see honeybees, butterflies, hummingbird showing the process of pollination. Okay, dear students, there is a difference between self-pollination and cross-pollination. In self-pollination, it is the transfer of pollen from anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower on same plant. Here we use same plant, that anther to stigma, that pollen moves from male part to the female part of the same flower or another flower of same plant. In cross pollination, it is the transfer of pollen from anther of one flower to stigma of another flower borne on different plant of same species. It means that transfer of pollen from male part of the flower of one flower to the stigma means female part of the flower of another flower. One flower to another flower born on different plants of same species. Okay, in second point, it does not require external agency. In self-pollination, external agency is not required. But in cross-pollination, an external agent like water, wind, insect, bees, etc. are required, but not in self-pollination. Both in self-pollination, both anther and stigma mature at same time. Means male and female parts mature at same time, but not in cross-pollination. In cross-pollination, anther and stigma mature at different time. In self-pollination, it can occur when flower is closed. Self-pollination happen when flower is closed, but in cross-pollination, it occurs when flower is open. And the last point is, self-pollination does not introduce any variation. But in cross pollination, it introduces variation. So, our article is completed here. I hope you understand today article. Dear student, today our homework is to learn the define pollination and explain types of pollination and differentiate between self pollination and cross pollination. Have a nice day. Thank you.